When I started doing workshops and I started traveling in the small villages and in the community radio stations and meeting people in family-owned television stations, I was very impressed and saddened really by the marginalized condition in which these reporters worked. When the torrents of water were coming down the mountain here, bringing these rocks and mud and rushes of water. Just in this little area over here, there was maybe 30 people who died. A year later, there were still bodies being found. And so many people lost their homes. Out of the river would come bodies just a year later, months later.
De lo que yo tal vez les voy a contar un poco la historia y es muy triste recordarle a uno.
Así cuando yo vi que iba el tanatón, pues ahí, le pasó trayendo a mi esposo y lo entanató entre todo el agua y el lodo y lo reenconó a la cocina.
Salí, me fui para allá, fui a la vuelta hasta aquí donde está el molino aquí arriba. Y ahí, desde allá me fui, al venir aquí ya no estaba la casa y vine para allá. Y aquí vi que las puertas ya estaban falsas y ya su hija de ella ya no estaba tan...
Todos los damnificados, porque son beneficiarios siendo entrevistados por Canal 22, en donde dijeron que los estados donó 16 millones para todos damnificados. ¿Y en dónde están los 16 millones? Y ya dejaron firmado, ya la autentiqué, ya envié la nota, pero no ha aparecido. O sea que ya nos dijeron, esperen, y hasta aquí estamos esperando con esto.
Pues por un lado natural, ¿no? Después de tanta pérdida, ¿no? Que debe haber mucho dolor que todavía se palpa aquí. Pero al mismo tiempo se ve también que la vida sigue, ¿no? Que quizás si no estaríamos aquí. These are people who have had no formal training in journalism, but they have a huge commitment to do their work, to get the truth out.
Al 5 de octubre,
abarca mucho. Ahí donde vino el deslave. Ahorita por las nubes no se mira de dónde vino, por la nube que está ahí a mitad, aunque el volcán es más alto. Pues a mitad está la nube, no se mira de dónde salió el deslave, el derrumbe, que vino a causar todo este daño.
It's a little tiny difference, but to be able to, in some way, have an impact on the journalistic culture of a country is a wonderful gift. I'm very grateful for that. It's very different from community radio in the United States. It's different. Some of it has a religious bent, and there are ads on the stations as well, and so it's not what we would recognize as community stations, right? But here you could not have the same sustainable model for community radio that you do in the United States just because of the economic situation here. So it is a community radio station, but Guatemala style.
Oscar, ¿qué tal? No, aquí estamos. ¿Qué tal, María? Gusto de saludarte. Buenas tardes.
These are the people who are on the front lines of the narco-trafficking story. They're on the front lines of corruption, working with very little resources, having to work 2 or 3 jobs in addition to their work as journalists, and they are in danger, including Eduardo Masbols, who was a participant in a workshop that I did in 2004. He was a mentor to other journalists. He was a member of a family of journalists, and he was doing his work, and he paid for it with his life.
3, 2, 1.
Gracias por
por continuar con nosotros, les seguimos informando.
Little by little,
Continuando con más
the media in Guatemala is beginning to reflect the entire society. 2 years ago, Héctor Cordero in El Quiché had a very hard time getting his stories on major television stations. He said they're just not interested in stories from El Quiché, or they only come here when there's a lynching.
Una Guatemala en paz. Diego Morales y Héctor Cordero, Noticiero Guatevisión.
3 years later, he reports he's a correspondent for Guatevisión. He is now able to tell the stories that he's always wanted to tell. Not only able to do that, but his stories are heard, and he is a recognized name in the capital media and certainly in his department. The principal Black Christ is in the church in Esquipulas, right, which is the sacred site, a very sacred pilgrimage site for all of Central Americans. It's where the peace accords were signed because it's so sacred for all of Central Americans. But there are Black Christs in many, many churches throughout Central America, like the one right here in the Calvario in Coban. We're going to ask that all of the journalists in Guatemala are able to exercise their profession safely. That's my request to the Black Christ.
Quiero hacer esta declaración pública en apoyo al colega periodista Héctor Cordero, nuestro corresponsal en el Quiché, quien desde hace ya bastante tiempo es objeto de una persecución implacable de parte del diputado de la UNE por ese departamento, Este Reina. Hacer periodismo en la provincia no es fácil, porque los periodistas muchas veces se enfrentan en soledad a los poderes que los políticos adquieren por una diputación, una alcaldía o bien una gobernación, y quieren tener una prensa amordazada o a su servicio, algo que no es el estilo de Héctor Cordero ni de este medio de comunicación. Por eso, los vecinos del Quiché deben saber que en Cordero tienen a uno de los periodistas más honrados y profesionales que hay en ese bello departamento y que se encuentra solo enfrentando el malestar de un diputado que ha logrado tejer toda una red de apoyos creados por el temor que sienten los demás de ser perjudicados por este diputado del partido oficial.